This is ReversingLabs' new podcast, and every couple of weeks we're coming to you with discussions with some of the leading threat intelligence analysts, threat researchers, reverse malware engineers, and folks who are really, close to the ground in understanding new malware and helping companies defend themselves from it. This episode's a great example of that. We got some amazing talent on the line. Just a couple things on the format. Basically, this is just an open discussion, and we do take questions from the audience. So we're using Zoom webinars. There's a Q&A feature, and please feel free to use it because we're leaving time at the end of our session today to ask and answer questions from you. The other thing is we're going to be conducting a short poll at the end of our episode, and folks who respond correctly to our poll questions will get a very exclusive ConversingLabs t-shirt sent to them with the cool ConversingLabs logo, which you can kind of see on see on the side of my screen, and be the first one in your group of friends to have one. So hang out for the poll at the end, and that'll get you a t-shirt. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest and actually get them to tell you a little bit about themselves before we launch into our conversation on internal threat intel. So to begin with, I'm going to start with my friend and colleague, Hrvoje. Hrvoje, introduce yourself to the audience. I don't think they've heard from you yet.
Thank you, Paul. So my name is Hrvoje Samardžić. I've been with ReversingLabs for the last almost 5 years now. So time flies by when you're having fun. But prior to that, my IT security journey started with the financial industry almost a decade ago. So I started auditing IT systems. I was looking for flaws throughout the bank system. I was doing data mining on various kind of logs. So I would say that's when I fell in with the job, with the industry, because I was using my, I would say, data mining skills to hunt for anomalies. I would say bad guys in our system. So that kind of fun and that kind of adrenaline, it's hard to match. So that's basically my story. Now with ReversingLabs, I'm using all of that experience and knowledge to create best possible threat intel solutions based on data we have. Yeah, and I would say that during that time, my path crossed this fabulous person who is going to introduce himself next. So he's one of the, I would say, best threat hunters in the world. I'm making a small intro, and I would say his path is not that different from mine, because he's also the master of his an environment. Because you probably didn't know that about James VT. He's an exceptional sysadmin as well. But to now go in more details, James, or should I say Luigi, please introduce yourself. Thanks.
Hello to everyone. Yes, I am an IT manager, and my company has hotels, hospital, and school. I manage all inside my company, from domain controller, PC client, internet contract, and firewall, and all things that concern about informatics, server, and PC security.
Yeah,
Right.
we would say jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. That is the idiomatic expression. Yes. So the first question for you all. So the topic today is threat intel, internal threat intel. You're soaking in it, which, if you're not from the United States and didn't grow up in the 80s like I did, is from a commercial for Palmolive dishwashing liquid. But I'll forgive you if you don't get the reference. But we're really talking about mining threat, the threat intelligence within your own environment to kind of improve your cyber defenses. For Luigi and Hrvoje maybe can take the first stab at this. When we're talking about threat intelligence, what are we referring to? And, what kind of distinguishes high quality threat intelligence from less high quality or low quality threat intelligence?
Yeah, well, let's first start with trying to define what threat intel is. I mean, I've read in preparation for this session, I've read a couple of definitions, but I would sum it up as information that can help you defend yourself. So that's the bottom line, because some of the, I would say, definitions are focused on it's existing or emerging menaces or hazards. So I would say this threat intel is a bit wider to me. It also consists of information on your data, on your system, on your user behaviors, because all of that information is helping you defend yourself. It's also part of this threat posture that's in your environment. And I mean, to defend properly, you need to know both. You need to know yourself and you need to know your opponent. So when it comes to high quality, I would say that, I mean, this topic, the subject of today's session is internal or local threat intelligence. I would say that's almost the definition of high quality threat intelligence. I'm not saying that external one cannot be high quality. I'm just saying that the internal one is definitely providing the best value because it's got the right, I would say, scope, because it's all about you. It's timely as possible because it's happening real time in your system, and it's definitely relevant. So it's providing the best value you can get from threat intel. It tells you who's attacking you and how. So that kind of information, even with the best external threat intelligence, there's some effort to filter out the right scope, the right threats you are seeing in your environment. I would say the threat intel that's tailored to your I would say I don't know, servers or OSs you use and so on. So I would say high quality comes down to this kind of information.
And Luigi, you said that you work as an IT administrator on behalf of hospitals and other types of enterprises. What do you use both external and internal threat intelligence in your work? And how do you use threat intelligence just in your day-to-day work as an IT administrator?
Well, threat intelligence is not easy for me to understand and explain, because there is some factor. Internal factor is understand the user of my company and understand what they use. If they use webmail, if they use not corporate software, and if they use WhatsApp or other application, And the other factor is understand what happen in the world, the cyber threat. For example, if Italy is under attack with ransomware or other cyber attack, then you must understand
that changes things for you if the larger context, threat context is, you know, you're in Italy, you're working for companies that are operating in Italy, and in that environment there are a lot of ransomware attacks going on. That changes the context, I guess.
Yes, but for example, I can learn so much from spam email and what malware I receive from spam, and I can change some rules inside firewall after I check spam email. For example, for URSNIF, if the anti-spam block the email, I check the attachment, I check what attachment do, and for example, today arrived an TNT fake email with one Excel document attachment, and campaign was pulled this today, but the domain was malicious, and I check if my firewall, if my antivirus block it. If not block it, I manual insert in the blacklist. This is one task related to the threat intelligence. Or for example, if I found, as I tweet about, a fake installer of Windows, I check all IOC, I block all IOC.
IOC indicators of compromise. So yeah. Right. Yep.
Fake domain, fake website, C2, about the malware contact.
So I think one question, and I'm sure all the people who are on this and listening have, is, you know, you're talking about internal threat intelligence. Where can they find it in their organization? Is this information that they might already be collecting, but maybe not using as well, or mining for intelligence? So where can and Luigi, I think this is probably a question for you first, where can they find this information? I think you've given us an idea already in your answers, but just go ahead.
Well, information, in my case, I found it in anti-spam, because I manage anti-spam, and I check all attachment. Other search, for example, is abuse checker, bazaar, URL house, and some public.
So these are like public sites where you can check these against virus.
And other things is that people should understand and check what the user inside the company do with the client. I think that, for example, if in my case I have firewall with software that check all website visited, and I have some alert about fake website or malicious website.
Yep. Roy, Luigi was
I have,
talking.
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
have a
Yeah,
question
go
for
ahead.
Luigi.
Yeah.
Luigi, when you analyze your spam emails, attachments, what kind of tools do you use for that? Do you have some internal sandboxes, or you refer to, I don't know, Bazaar, or I don't know, Aniron, some other tools to extract those IOCs?
I use a lot of sandbox and free services, as you have mentioned, for Excel document or Office document in general. I use Aniron. For payloads, I use to enter their labs, and of course I use ReversingLabs sandbox, and it's very useful. Upload the sample to Bazaar from Booz CA, and because inside there is a lot of sandbox that analyzes the sample, JSON box, triage. There is a lot of them.
So
it's more easy with free sandbox that check every single sample in manual mode, because I have no time to do my work and my passion that is related to my Twitter account.
Yeah. So, I mean, that brings up a good question, and I'm sure folks would say, which is, listen, I've got however many users, 1,000 users, 5,000 users in my environment. I'm getting millions of emails a day, tens of thousands of attachments. How do you scale that type of analysis, sandboxing and analysis of attachments in a way that doesn't completely make it impossible to do anything else that you need to do? So how do you scale this, I guess, is the question. Given that most of those attachments are just going to be identified as known malware, and a small percentage of them are not. But how do you scale that, Luigi?
In my case, I have anti-spam from LibreEsva, that is an Italian company, and I have some custom rule engage. If a mail have zipped, have an archive attachment, is blocked by default. If it is a executable attachment, is blocked by default. If I have some Office document, if the document have inside macro, is blocked by default. And then I take all blocked attachment, and I check it manually. Every single file. Fortunately, I receive a lot of spam, but only 5 or 10 mail with a malicious attachment. That is easy for me manage all.
So we talk a lot about how most attacks, of sophisticated attacks these days, start with phishing emails and malicious attachments or malicious links in emails. Is that the most valuable kind of threat intelligence? Just that those attachments and that email traffic, or are there other sources and systems that you should be paying attention to as a network defender, as a sysadmin, besides just the spam traffic and the email traffic?
As I speak about before, the other important thing is understand what happens around you, and if the there is a remote desktop attack, you must learn about it and understand what you can do to defend your company. For example, open a remote desktop for domain controller is a void, because you must protect it with IP whitelist and true with some blacklist. Then another task is that all users that inside the company that use PC client not must be admin, but regular user, and you must block manual installation of apps or software from end user. There are a lot of tasks that you can engage related to threat intelligence. Threat intelligence, in my opinion, is understand what is a cyber threat and engage a lot of action to protect from inside threat and outside threat.
Hervoje, Luigi brings up a really good point, which is, you need to understand what's going on within your environment and like what platforms people are using. So for example, if people are using WhatsApp or Telegram, those can be avenues for attack. And if you're not aware that they're being used, you're not going to be monitoring them. But like how do you or Slack is a more common example as well, right? Like, how do you go from knowing that people are using WhatsApp within my environment to actually monitoring it and collecting and sort of managing it from a security standpoint and collecting potentially threat intelligence from it?
It's a question for me, right?
Yes, unless you want to punt it to Luigi.
Yeah, I'll cover it. No worries. But I'm also interested in what Luigi has to say on that. I mean, what we've been discussing is it's paramount to know what your users need, how do they behave. For instance, one thing that's very cool about Luigi, he's been telling me about, he's restricting the usage of certain resources within his environment only on working hours. So there are many different ways how you can limit the attack surface to your attackers, so they don't have the opportunity to use those tools that are, let's say, potential attack vector. For instance, you can limit those hours, or like your users, if these tools are being misused, they will get a notification they are being used. So they can also see something fishy is going on. There's also a blacklist or whitelist opportunity. You can decrease the level of access rights for each user. So it's basically tailoring your defenses based on your customer needs. So whatever happens outside of that restricted access, it's a red alarm. So it's creating an environment when an attacker tries to do something, they're like a bull in a china shop. They will just kick every single booby trap. Well, I will call it booby trap because whatever they do that's out of this standard, it will create some kind of an alert. So knowing your environment and knowing, so we haven't talked about this a lot about this external threat intelligence. It's about the information on what the usual TTPs, the tactics of your adversary are. So by knowing what they will usually do, you can prepare to better detect those kinds of behaviors. I mean, they are almost, I mean, more and more they're trying, to lay low and to be as much as possible resembling your users. So they're trying to blend in, to be your user, to mimic them. But by knowing that, you can change something so they will stand out of the crowd. That's very important to know.
Yeah, Luigi, I mean, we hear a lot today about, attackers like living off the land, right? So using common administrative tools, PowerShell and stuff like that to, facilitate their activity, lateral movement and so on. How do you handle that as an IT administrator, and what, because there's a lot of that activity going on all the time. Most of it is not malicious. So how do you monitor like those really common administrative tools and look for behavior that may be suspicious or malicious?
Can you explain better, please?
Yeah, sorry, that was a long question, long way to word it. So attackers use like common administrative tools like PowerShell a lot, right? How do you use local threat intelligence to help identify when they may be using, that type of traffic that may be malicious?
Well, I have some report from firewall that show me if I am under attack or there is some nasty traffic. And I have engaged, for example, intrusion prevention system, gateway antivirus inside the firewall, botnet blacklist. But in my case, I have prevention approach. I close all service that I don't need. I filter server from outside connection, and as I said before, I use a lot of whitelist and blacklist.
Yeah. You mentioned like spotting unusual, platforms like WhatsApp or Discord or things that employees may be using. How do you, once you know that those are in use, how do you monitor those, or how do you, is it just about limiting use of those within your environment, or is there a way to actually monitor them and see if they're being used maliciously?
I limited the user.
Okay.
So in this case, with firewalls, I can block apps. So I can block AnyDesk, I can block WhatsApp, and and if a user need to use WhatsApp or other application that is not related to the work, I have our Wi-Fi connection that is not connected with the domain controller, and I tell to the user to use own smartphone or own notebooks that are not business device, to do all.
So could you give us an example, Luigi, of how you were able to use like local threat intelligence or internal threat intelligence to actually identify an attack? Can you give us like an example or a war story from either the recent past or whatever about how you were able to go from,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
A lot of years ago,
Yep.
when I started to work with my actual company, I realized that some firewall was under attack. And I identify the IP is a Columbia University. And then with this information and this malicious task that I log, I decide to block all connection to all my firewall from only 2 IP and not as was before that everyone could be connected to the firewall login. This is one example. Or another example, and when I was hit by a ransomware 7 years ago, I started to learn more about it, and I started to learn how to protect from ransomware, and I engaged some tasks, change anti-spam, change antivirus solution, and change how I backup all my data company and all my virtual machine. And I understand how ransomware hit my company. 7 years ago, ransomware was from malicious domain when user visited, or from spam email. Today, ransomware is an attack from a remote desktop for most of the case. Then you must understand it and take the right decision to protect.
Voya, I know, obviously ReversingLabs works with organizations around, threat identification a lot. What are you seeing out there just with the customers you're working at and how they're leveraging both internal and external threat intelligence, and kind of maybe like, how do you, is there a way to combine those two sources to improve, internal threat detection, threat hunting? Like what's the mix of internal versus external, and how are companies leveraging that right now?
Yeah, I would say that the local internal threat intelligence is the cornerstone of the threat intel programs, and that is definitely how anyone should start. Try, because that involves creating processes around your environment, collecting logs, inspecting those, learning about yourself. And with some maturity, then I would say external threat intel feeds come into play. But I would say that is sometimes just a checkbox. So meaning that this external threat intel is not always, I would say, verified. Like, does it really make a difference to the consumer environment or not? Because it always has to be a specific focus, a specific scope, to get the best value out of it. So what people will tend to do is buy several. So with having a couple of them, they are, I would say, certain they will get what they need. So that it's how it usually plays out. It's not, I would say, bad way of doing it. I'm just saying it's maybe not best cost-effective way of doing it. But other than that, there are, very different levels of maturity between companies and investments being made in the field. So depending on that, you have, people, when it comes to external threat intelligence, I would say open source threat intelligence is the main source of external threat intelligence, with, I would say, more mature companies, having different vendors providing different types of threat intelligence, because there is not only this tactical level with a lot of IPs, domains, or URIs, emails, or whatever technical level of indicators, but there's also a higher level of intelligence that big companies need to make database decisions on where to invest, because with all the global situation and attacks like evolving, being more sophisticated, and it's really posing a great threat to any enterprise. There are big investments being made, and they need to be really, the battles that they're choosing need to be chosen very wisely, to get the best value out of threat intel programs.
Just a note to our attendees, we are going to be taking questions from the audience. So if you've got questions for Luigi or Hrvoje, use the question and answer feature, and Carolyn is here with us, and she's going to be taking your questions, and she'll pass them on in a couple of minutes. Go ahead.
I would like to add something. I've missed to comment when Luigi was saying he's using Malware Bazaar and other, I don't know, like AnyRun and other tools for basically creating his local threat intel, because these files he's getting on his email, they're just a starting point. You need to analyze those files. But I would like to emphasize the importance of sharing those files with the community, because what Luigi is doing is very important to the community. And I want to stress that like multiple times, because by uploading his files, his findings, because it's not only files he sees in his environment, it comes from all over the space and beyond. It's providing his local threat intel is basically the world's threat intel, because by using those platforms, he's sharing all of that information worldwide. And it's, everybody knows James Watts because of this. He's really tireless when it comes to sharing this information. So
yeah, Luigi, tell us about that. How did you get in? How did you come from just sort of dealing with the stuff that's going on in your environment to sort of saying, I want to kind of engage with the broader threat hunting community and share what I know, and obviously get back what they know? And has that helped you in your work?
Did you ask me how I started?
Yeah. When did you get the idea to start, going on Twitter and really sharing what you were learning with the broader community?
I think about 8 years ago. I started all with a malware forum, where a lot of people ask help because they was infected. Then I started to open a Virus Total account that at the time was a free account with no ability to download sample. Then I know Malware Hunter team, and I start to open a Twitter account, and then I know other people that give me a lot of trust and insert me inside other malware hunter forum, and they give me virus total intelligence account, and then I start to work with my actual company. And after I was with the ransomware, I start to learn myself, because no, at the time, no, I had not found any solution that can protect myself. Then I started to learn myself, and I start my Twitter account and my nick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is all starting from an infection. When my company was hit, I start to learn more, and I start through social Twitter account and.
Yep. And Hervoye, Luigi mentioned Malware Hunter Team. They're a very famous group of folks like Luigi who are really deep in this. Are there other sources online that folks can use? I mean, Luigi just said, like, I got hit and I needed to, deal with that, and then also learn more about why I got hit. Are there other resources out there online that folks should know about for getting some of this information and kind of improving their awareness, their threat awareness?
You mean like open source threat info sources?
Open source threat intel sources, forums and communities, obviously individual, kind of Twitter handles or groups.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Twitter rules these communities. There's a lot of information being shared through Twitter. Yeah, but I would say it's sometimes hard to follow everything. It's really overwhelming.
It's a lot of noise.
I mean, there are a couple of accounts that you will, if you start from James Watt and see a couple of his connections, you can like limit yourself to a couple of dozens at most tops of accounts that are really sharing the most valuable data. I wouldn't go farther than that because there's just too much noise. And a lot of this information, at least the most valuable one, gets retweeted, and it will definitely be tweeted by some of these accounts. So that's when it comes to Twitter. But like we were discussing about this, I would say platforms like AbuseCH, their Malware Bazaar, and Feodo Tracker. There's also, I mean, a lot of stuff is publicly available on VirusTotal. So many of the files you come across in your environment will already be uploaded somewhere, like on Bazaar or VirusTotal, and you get a lot of information already being prepared in those places. So guys, you will usually pull down that data and cross-reference in their environment, because there is no need to, like, if you're a smaller shop, there's almost no need to invest in your analysis capabilities when a lot of this data is already available. But when the environment scales up, there are more incidents, it gets more complex, and you need to automate on pulling all of that data and actually leveraging that data. Because James Watt is a great example of how a well-motivated, knowledgeable sysadmin can become a world threat hunter. And his threat intel local threat intel now is, I would say, world's threat intel, and I'll thank him again for that. But when the operation scales up, then the automation comes into play. So then when your analysis system needs to be built up, there's probably some threat intelligence platforms you will need to organize all of that data and share across your organization, and pull in the data from likes of external TI vendors, pull the data from Twitter, from Malware Bazaar, and other places that offer this information for free. So the more complex your environment is, the more complex your threat intel program will get.
Okay, we're almost at the end of our talk. Kellen, do we have any questions to put to Hrvoje and Luigi?
We do have some questions. Hi, everybody. My name is Carolyn Van Arsdale. I'm a cyber content creator here at ReversingLabs.
Welcome back, Carolyn.
Hi, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. So for our first question, I have a question for James. Do you ever run simulations to test efficiency of existing controls or test detection if, for example, you drop some IOC objects to production environment?
Yes, I test some tests. For example, I try to hack myself, and
you try to hack yourself, kind
yeah.
of red team your own environment. Yeah.
From inside and outside.
Uh-huh.
And it was very important to understand what I can change to protect more. Obviously, you can't protect 100% all, but I learn from myself how to improve. Then to check if antivirus solution work, I have a real PC client where I run malicious sample, ransomware, or Office document that try to download the payload from malicious domain. Not every time all go good, but sometimes, for example, antivirus solution not identify the malicious document, but is able to block the domain, the malicious domain or payload. In other case, I try to run some ransomware and check if I am able to restore all backup. Then 3 tasks: hack yourself, run malicious sample, and some disaster recovery task.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I have a question. Oh, okay, I'll go ahead. Hrvoje, I have a question for you. With the rise of AI solutions, in your opinion, how far are we from having AI replacing all or most of the work threat intelligence analysts are doing? Is that already happening, and is that possible?
Interesting question. I would say that as far as AI goes with cybersecurity, we are leveraging machine learning in different places. So it's an attempt to find patterns, behaviors that can be pulled out from these huge volumes of data that are generated to better defend. But I would say that even these machine learning models are today modeled with the help of humans, and that's as far as it goes today. And I don't see AI being leveraged or replacing threat analysts or cybersecurity personnel anytime soon. Because even when the true AI joins cyber ranks, I believe they'll be working hand by hand, because AI doesn't know what are our interests, how do we think, and so on. They'll definitely need some helping hand. So we are safe for now, at least our jobs.
That's good to know. All right, Paul, what are we thinking?
So we're gonna push you a poll question, and this is for the we actually have two poll questions, but only one of them is really a question. And folks who answer this right are going to get a ConversingLabs t-shirt. So here we go. I'm going to launch the question. And the question is, what are common sources of internal threat intelligence? And the options are third-party software bill of materials, open source repositories, or network central logs, email gateway, endpoint security agents. If you answer this correctly, you will get a ConversingLabs t-shirt. And we'll give you another 30 seconds to answer. People Googling furiously. Ten seconds left to answer, folks. Okay. I'm going to end the poll. Okay. The correct answer, the credited answer, as I often say, is network central logs, email gateway, endpoint security agents. Those are all the sort of some of the things that Luigi and Hervoye were talking about. I can guess like open source repositories in theory. Well, we might give you a t-shirt for answering that, but generally for internal threat intelligence, not really talking about open source repositories. Okay, final question just to push to you is more kind of a follow-up question. And that is, if you'd like to learn more about leveraging internal threat intelligence, please let us know, and we will follow up with you with some additional information, resources that might help you in your own endeavors. And with that, I think in terms of just wrapping up, Hervoye and Luigi, any final recommendations or advice to people who are on the line, who maybe like Luigi are in your situation, sysadmin, and looking to just get started using local threat intelligence? What should they do? What are some easy things that they can do to make use of this?
Luigi, will you?
Or Hervoye, either one of you.
As I said before, check own environment, check if there is some hole, some backdoor open. For backdoor, I mean remote desktop open to all. And check if you have a good anti-spam, check if you have some group policy inside your company to check what your user do and block what you don't want that the user. And I think that this is the first step.
Yeah.
Hervoye?
I can add on. I mean, Luigi is the best, I would say, proof that knowing your environment is very important. So that's the start of knowing what's like not in your baseline, because all of that is your local threat intel. So whatever stands out, that's the starting point of I would say the iteration cycle, because based on all of that information, you either monitor or block that what you found, and you do it constantly over and over. Right. So every day Luigi will take part of his malware samples, pull out the IOCs, block that, or tweak his environment so he can better detect their TTPs. So it's a constant process, and you need to iterate all the time.
Yes, there is another thing that
go ahead.
About threat intelligence. Understand the malware spam campaign. For example, if you check my sample at the Malware Bazaar related to Ursnif, you can understand with the upload date of the sample that Ursnif campaign are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for 1 month, 2 months, every time, or other campaign are only one time at a month. About 2 years ago, before COVID, there was malware campaign where I can predict malware campaign, because they follow cybercrime, follow a scheme when hitting, for example, Italy with Ursnif or Gods, where, and it's funny, predict to malicious domain name. For example, last domain was fast link or link fast. When you receive one Office document with fast link, you can try reverse the domain name, and maybe you are lucky and you have found another IOC.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. A lot of what you're talking about is just using the tools that you've already got, right? It's not like there are new silver bullet magic tools to help you do this. It's kind of using the information and tools you've probably already got, firewall, anti-spam, et cetera, but just doing it in a lot more active way with a lot quicker, response time, and also staying on top of active threats and campaigns in a way that, not kind of sitting back and just hoping that the tools work, right? Okay, I think that brings us to the top of the hour. And so I wanted to thank Hrvoje and Luigi and Carolyn again so much for joining us. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another ConversingLabs episode. We're going to be continuing to explore this amazingly interesting arena of threat hunting, malware research, malware investigation, and reverse engineering. So we hope you join us. If you've got topics that you'd like us to discuss, please feel free to send us an email. Let us know what you're interested in, and we'll try and get it on the agenda. But Luigi, thanks so much for joining us. Hrvoje, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciated having you both.